Welcome to Travel Stories with your hosts, Tom Kim and Trevor Mountcastle. This episode, we go into the Wayback Machine, talking about some past incredible trips that we've done, and we sort of, I think we kind of reflect on the past.
Oh yeah, time to pull out stuff from the drawer. Airlines that don't even exist anymore, right?
Yeah, and the fun thing that sort of struck this topic for us though is this whole talk of United trying to buy American or merge with American, and then United trying to buy JetBlue. I think there's just a lot of talk about United, and it sparked a lot of memories, I think, for both you and I.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I have some very fond memories of a former airline that became part of United, right? So, and I guess their logo continues to live on.
Yeah, I had some fond memories of that one too. So why don't we dive into it?
Sure.
What we're talking about, folks, is a small little airline that used to be based out of Houston, Texas, called Continental.
My dad still, whenever he sees a United plane, he always calls it Continental. So.
Oh, really?
Because he recognizes the lovely blue globe right on the tail.
Yeah. Well, and the fun part of this is Gordon Bethune, who was the CEO of Continental, many, many years ago, probably decades at this point. We actually had referenced Gordon Bethune on a prior episode when we had Michael Rubiano on, talking about the Star Megadews. Mm-hmm. Because Bethune really embraced the community, the flyer talkers and such. And so Continental really has a steeped history in our community, I think. And it's a shame that they've kind of gone by the wayside, and not a lot of its vestiges remain. We'll get to probably a little later after you share a story, and I'll share a little bit of a story myself about where they sort of remain. But really, I have a lot of fond memories of Continental. It's just a different kind of airline compared to the environment of all the airlines that we have now.
Absolutely. I mean, you bring up Gordon Bethune, legendary CEO.
Absolutely legendary.
Worked at Boeing, I believe. So, had kind of a little bit of an engineering background as well. And at the same time, had a real philosophy on how he ran Continental for a number of years. Now, mind you, he wasn't, I think, the CEO when they merged with United. I think there was a different CEO at that time. But he's a pretty significant and I would say a consequential executive for Continental, really in kind of the first half of the decade of the 2000s, because I feel like that's when he had probably his most influence in on the carrier.
Yeah, I mean, I would put Gordon Bethune up there with Crandall, with Kelleher, with what was his name? Tripp.
Juan Tripp.
Way back, yeah, Juan Tripp.
Yeah. I mean, he's pretty high up there. I would definitely put him as definitely one of the more consequential CEOs and executives in the aerospace arena, especially in the early part of the 21st century. So, which is incidentally the time period frame where I happen to be referencing, because we were having this conversation where I think we were talking about airline mergers and stuff, and of course that we talked a little bit about Gordon Bethune, and we part of it also came up in the episode we recorded just a little while ago with Ed.
Oh yeah, Ed.
Because one of the things we just talked about was just how some of the catering on some of the big three airlines, and especially I think unfortunately especially on United and American, I think has kind of suffered, and that's very antithetical, I think, to kind of what Gordon Bethune evangelized while he ran the airline. I remember his quote that I keep like quoting is, you can make a pizza so cheap that nobody will want to eat it.
I think we see that unfortunately far too many times now, really. And it's true though. But it's funny that you mentioned that, because Continental, my first experience with Continental, I was a long-term United guy. I was I would go out of my way to get on that United 757 anytime I could. And that seat 7D, I think it was my seat. Um, if I didn't get the upgrade to the front cabin as a 1K or an expat or a Plat Pro or whatever the one level below that was, I was sitting in 7D, and I remember flying out of Tucson. I'd been at a conference for work and had to fly just a quick hop Tucson to Houston and then get back to the East Coast. And I'm on this small little jet, just in economy, and they give me a muffin. And I'm a United guy at this point. United got no muffins. There were no muffins on United. And so I'm looking at this and I'm like, wow, this is delightful. I didn't expect this. This is maybe I need to make my way onto Continental more often. And then I had that connection in Houston, and I get on a nice aircraft with a screen.
Mm-hmm.
They had the screen, and if I recall, they had like DirecTV or something like that. Like you could actually watch something of meaning. And so suddenly this United diehard is like, hey, Continental's not so bad.
Yeah, I think they understood some things. Some of these amenities, some of these creature comforts are very memorable, And I remember Gordon Bethune getting on that TV screen on a Continental plane and explaining, to the audience, after, other things, thanking you for your business and all that. But he made a point to point out, Continental's about offering meals at mealtime and, offering entertainment. And he saw that, I think, as a differentiator. And Continental, was definitely an airline that I seeked out. I felt like if I was going to be on a Continental flight, it would probably be superior to quite a few other flights that I would have taken. Going back in that history museum, what is it? The Wayback Machine, should I say? Back in the early 2000s, there was actually a bit of an alliance, which was kind of unique. It wasn't really it wasn't SkyTeam, it wasn't Star Alliance, it wasn't Oneworld. It was this weird alliance where Northwest and Continental were big code share partners. And one of the things that I remember is, I actually did fly a lot of Northwest, but I actually enjoyed flying Continental quite a bit more and just, having my miles credit to my Northwest account where I would have my elite status. Just because, again, just for those creature comforts, because if you fly on a Northwest plane, you were not getting a screen. You may not be getting a meal, but you were more likely to have that, especially if you're sitting in the back on a Continental flight.
Yeah, and Continental, they, if I recall, they took good care of you in other ways, right? Didn't you have a operational upgrade at one point that you were reflecting on?
Yeah, so let's get into it. So I think one of the things that, again, this is Travel Stories, so I thought it make some sense to talk about a travel story, and this one would be from quite a while back, So this is a flight that I took. I think this was my first flight to Hawaii, actually, ever, and I managed to grab a sub. I think it was probably like a $300 something flight from DC connecting in Houston to Honolulu, and of course in economy. And I was a newly minted Northwest Elite at this time. So this probably would have been like late 2001, early 2002, somewhere in that range. And had the opportunity to fly this. I was going with my sister and her boyfriend at the time. So there was three of us traveling. And, I really hadn't expected a lot. It was actually also one of the first times I think I flew through or transited through Houston as well. So this was a lot of new things. And, again, this relatively inexpensive economy ticket. I get to Houston, I sit around at the gate, and I forget if I actually knew that I was not entitled to an upgrade or not. But of course, I was wondering. I was newly minted elite, and hey, it had been working out so far. Even as like a silver, which is what I was still getting upgraded occasionally, and I was pretty happy about that. And lo and behold, they oversold Coach, and they upgraded me. And this turned out to be really an epic trip and an epic flight, and one that I remember tremendously. Even 20 years later, or more than 20 years later now.
Anything more you want to share on this? On what made it as epic as it was?
Well, number one, it was intercontinental, right? So it was from Houston to Honolulu. It was a pretty long flight.
So that's a wide body or a narrow body?
and it was on a wide body. Yeah, it was on a 767, a Continental 767. And at the time for that route, their business class product was called Business First, right? Because they were one of these newer American carriers that didn't have a first class. They had just business class, right? And that was they just have the two cabins, business class and economy, and that's how they branded it. The Continental front cabin was called Business First. And this was an interesting layout because this is on the 767. These were these old recliner seats, which actually reclined quite a bit. And what's even more interesting is on a 767, it was 212, which is kind of a weird layout. And I was in the aisle of the one. I was in I guess all the throne seats. But that was just interesting. It was a super comfortable flight. Everything about it was really great. Of course, it was catered really well. I have some photos. I'm gonna probably try to throw this up on the YouTube version of this podcast so that people can see some of this. In fact, I still have, and maybe you guys can see this. I still have my Continental amenity kit. Oh, I have it upside down. Let me see. Yep, this is the Continental amenity kit from that. There's nothing in it, so
just a little bit worn.
A little bit worn.
Make out the Continental.
You could barely make out the Continental globe. Fortunately, no 25-year-old lotion or toothpaste in there. And guess what I have? I managed to go through all my airline menus, and I, of course, have the Business First menu that I have. And I can actually go over kind of the meal that I had on that trip, which was pretty amazing. It started out with a salmon appetizer, sterling silver steak, and ice cream. I think I think it's the other. That was actually the return. By the way, I got operationally upgraded both directions, so that's even crazier. This is actually, I think, the one that I have pictures of.
I tell you, talk about going in the Wayback Machine. You're even pulling out the menu.
I'm pulling out the menu. You see the beautiful little hibiscus on the front? It says Business First, up here. And, I had Bluebell homemade ice cream. It was a wonderful sundae. I think it might have been the first sundae that I had on a plane. It was quite memorable. Again, I remember getting this upgrade, getting on, and just being like, just the sea of relaxation of number one, having like absolutely no one next to me, just like two aisles, on either side of me. And then of course I'm given a present, I'm given an amenity kit, like, I get a present? Like, what is this thing? Because, obviously up to then I'd only been upgraded on domestic flights. This is my first time being upgraded on kind of a transcontinental type of flight on Continental.
Had you flown transcontinental in a premium cabin before this point, or was this your?
I had as a kid. And it was interesting. I think it was just because we were unaccompanied minors. They put us up in the upper deck of a 747-200 on Northwest Airlines when we flew over to Korea once. And I didn't know what the heck was going on. I just remember sitting in coach and some flight attendant coming by. Okay, kids, get up. We're moving to better seats. I'm like, what? Are you sure? I think I remember being like 9 or 10 and like being very skeptical about this strange woman telling me to move my seat.
As you're getting moved into like the cargo hold.
Yeah. I was like, where were they taking us? And then we went upstairs and we went upstairs to business class. And I remember being served some melon with ham and thinking,
yes.
Who eats melon with ham? And thinking they have weird food here is what I remember as a child. But we're going really off tangent here, by the way.
It wouldn't be Travel Stories without a tangent.
I guess it wouldn't. But I do remember us getting up from coach, seeing some like military uniformed individuals taking our seats, and then us going up to the upper deck and thinking, wow, this is a lot nicer up here. It's quite a bit more spacious.
and so let's bring it back to the 767. So here you are.
Mm-hmm.
You're a 212 configuration. You've enjoyed your Bluebell ice cream. You've
Yes.
had your shrimp or salmon. You've had your sterling silver steak.
Yes, I have.
And you're just enjoying yourself. This is a Barca Lounger type style seat, I imagine.
Is
a little footrest, maybe.
Definitely not lie flat. This is pre-lie flat. So but it was a Barca Lounger with a lot of recline. And again, I'll throw up some photos of what the seat looked like. But again, dining well. I finished my meal. I'm relaxing. I'm watching a movie. on my little personal screen that folds out. And I realized, hey, I wanted my headphones, which I left with my sister. So I go back to the cheap seats, go visit her.
You went to the unwashed.
I did the unwashed masses. I went to go grab my headphones because I wanted to listen to my MP3 player. I don't know. Probably wasn't a Zune. It might have been like a Rio MP3 player or something. This will date this. The time of this flight.
Maybe an Arcos.
So I go back there and then, grab my headphones. Like, hey, can I get my headphones back? I want to use them. And like, okay. So then I start heading back and she's like, hey, so how is it up there? And I pause for a second. And I think, wait, I could lie to her, but I don't. I just say, I could lie to you, but it's fantastic.
That's wonderful. I mean, that's just wonderful. You can't beat that.
No. But anyway, yeah, it was an amazing flight. Again, memorable meal service. Still have photos of it. Still remember it. And I think, clearly by the printed menu and everything, this was, I think, a very good showing for Continental. I mean, they were clearly investing in the product. They had a celebrity chef on the other way back. And yeah, as I just mentioned, I was also operationally upgraded on the way back, which is, how do you do that? How do you get 2 operational upgrades both ways to intercontinentally? By the way, I have another story about that we might have to talk about later, but
a little teaser for
what's to come. But this was definitely the first time I've had it happen, and it was very memorable. Again, I still have some of the little mementos and souvenirs from that trip, and it's back when they did it right. I would imagine if I were flying Houston to Honolulu, I'm guessing they still have that route or something on United. I would probably guess that my meal would not be as good as what I was served back then.
Oh, of course not. Of course not. I mean, things have changed. Obviously, you might have quinoa. Quinoa.
You really love to bring up quinoa.
I have the worst. I'm very bad with that, but I just can't stand it. Like, I can't understand why that is on an aircraft. I don't even seek it out on the ground. Why would I seek it out in the air? Like, if you want to give me rice, potatoes, those are fine.
Well, they don't have to heat it up, I guess. It's something they can serve chilled. Is that what
they can do?
Maybe that's why. Yeah. Well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So kind of going back there, Gordon Bethune didn't see Continental's merger with United. That was Jeff Smizek, who, interestingly enough, took over the larger United airline from, I think it was Glenn Tillerson. Was it? Glenn Tilton, who was the United CEO at the time. It's interesting when you think about it, because the same thing happened with American and U.S. Airways, right? The U.S. Airways crowd under Parker took over American rather than the American CEO. It's sort of like the small guy.
Well, yeah, but I think Smizek came. Did Smizek come from Continental, or did he come from?
Yeah, Smizek came from Continental.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he took over from Bethune in 2002.
Okay.
So my memory of Continental, other than the muffin, was on a 2011 or 2012 flight back during the merger, and I had again, I was very much a United loyalist, and so I was always focused on flying United metal, even though they had the what we call the dorm room seating, right? Like on a 777, it was like the 242, kind of lay flat business class. And I had just been generally just focused on that because I thought it was a pretty decent seat. We're in Rio de Janeiro on a very complex itinerary, which I think I've shared on prior episodes. So I'll just talk about the little bit of the Continental tie-in. And one flight gets canceled or delayed 12 hours. I convince United to instead fly me out of Rio instead of Buenos Aires, where I was supposed to fly out of. Mm-hmm. And I because they changed the flight, it turned into a Y fare. And so I convinced them to apply a system-wide. And so now I'm going from an economy trip out of Buenos Aires via, I think it was Houston to Baltimore. Now I'm Rio to Sao Paulo to Newark to Baltimore. And originally they put us to Dulles, but the Dulles leg got canceled somehow. And so by the time that we end up getting into Sao Paulo and getting onto our plane into Newark, it's a 767. We're in that BE Aerospace. I think it's now Collins sort of lay flat seat. That you kind of do the footsie with your seatmate because there's
it's a 2-2, right? So small. Where they're on you've got a partner. You're paired up.
Yeah, yep, 2-2, and so we sit down, and at this point we were all exhausted. My wife and I had started our day at like probably 8 or 9 to get to the airport. We had gone through. We had left the country in Rio. We had negotiated our way back into the country in Rio so we could go and check in for our flight for our new United flights. Then we had to leave the country again. We had to fly, even though we're quote unquote out of the country. We were flying from Rio out of the international terminal to Sao Paulo into the international terminal. We ended up going into the United Lounge, which was probably the worst lounge I have ever seen. This is back when the Sao Paulo terminal, the international terminal, which I think you saw a little piece of, like like I think I had described or shown you a part, because I think it's now like the domestic terminal. Mm-hmm. The new international is great. It's just gorgeous.
Right.
But the old one felt like my 10th grade biology lab.
You were telling some
green floor.
You were telling some horror stories about the terminal, and then we went there, and then I was like, "Huh, it's not so bad here. What are you talking about?"
They have done a lot. I mean, but like the sights and smells and all that other fun stuff. And we ducked into the United Club very, very briefly, and they didn't even have a single clean glass. Like the wine is sitting out warm. There's no ice. There's no other beverages. There's not even a single clean glass. There's not even an empty seat. Many of the seats are looking very torn or very tired. It was like, I'm like, this is not the experience we were looking for here.
Yep.
And we get on board, and at this point I'm punchy, and so my wife and I sit down, and the flight attendant comes by, and it's the tight seat. You're fairly tight with each other, and he welcomes us on, and I say, and we're polite, and then I say, and you can just put the chiller right between our seats. That'd be wonderful, with a nice bottle of champagne, and we'll both have the Chateaubriand, please. He had a good laugh, and we all had a good laugh, and he was a good sport. The irony, going on tangents, is that Americans started serving Chateaubriand only 5 years later on their South American flights.
Wow.
Yeah, I was rather surprised. They did that for a while around the Olympics, going back and forth to Santiago and Rio as one does.
And the pre-U.S. Airways management, right? American had really good catering. In fact, when I stopped flying Delta as much as I did, and kind of moved my allegiance over to American for a while there, I just remember kind of being a little bit shocked, because I'm like, wait, warm nuts? You serve those? And then being served a sundae, on a meal, from Dulles to Dallas, which is only a 2.5-3 hour flight, but being served ice cream sundae. I was quite shocked. I was like, "What? You're actually serving an actual meal and having courses, and actually having like a ice cream with toppings? Like that's crazy."
It was the cookie for me. I think it was not just American; it was United too. Had the cookies. Mm-hmm. There was a period of time in like that 2008, 2009 to like 2000, maybe 14 or so, maybe 15.
Yes.
Where the cookie was king, and everybody was so focused on the cookie. I remember right around the time where they started tweaking the recipe, and Gary had a couple of posts on it. Gary Leff on View from the Wing, and my gosh, the amount of people that were up in arms that they were changing the cookie.
Yes.
That I mean, that was the thing. That was the thing. You'd finish your meal. As you're finishing your meal, they'd put it into the oven, and the smell,
it would waft.
fragrance of the cookie would waft into the cabin, and you're just like, oh, this is like, I'm not going to say it's like, grandma's house, but I mean, it's a dang good cookie. And
I like the cookie.
It puts you in the right frame of mind for just, having a nice rest of your flight. You break a little piece out. Maybe you put it in milk. Maybe you just enjoy it, without the milk. And I mean, these were like the cookies that nowadays I think stores charge like $3, $3 to $5 for.
You probably pay that just for the butter. But I do love the cookies, but I miss the sundaes too. So I think they moved from the sundaes to the cookies, and I miss my ice cream.
Yeah, I mean, they need to bring dessert back. The dessert. I mean, the thing is it just kind of comes down to how what their priorities are, right? I think there was an article probably like a month or so ago that Kirby says, Scott Kirby, the CEO of United, said that he doesn't eat on a transatlantic red eye.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and when we see the quality of the food, we can tell you don't eat it because if you're not putting any money into it.
Yep.
But on the main show, Sam and Robert were talking about a couple of David Neilman podcasts, and how he sort of focused on different things. Like you could spend a few bucks on food, or you could spend $5 on a screen, and what's going to get the better value for the customer.
Yep.
And it's interesting. I've only heard the snippets from them. I want to hunt that podcast down. I think there's one that's we'll see if we can dig it up out of their show notes. But there's I think 2 or 3 good podcasts, Airlines Confidential, and then another one that has that. And it's an interesting perspective of sort of how they balance out. I would love to have been in the boardroom when the American leadership actually ripped out screens, which they're out of their beautiful A319s and some of the newer aircraft that were coming in. Because the U.S. Airways, Legacy U.S. Airways leadership just didn't believe in screens.
I'm pretty sure Doug Parker had something to do with that. I'm sure he was speaking up
without a doubt
in those boardrooms.
There's no doubt.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess hindsight, that was probably the wrong thing to do. I mean, I think you may not even use a screen, but having it there, it does, I think, improve kind of the environment for passengers, and occasionally it's good to have. It's just nice not to hold your phone. You can actually just sit back and watch something, instead of having to hold your device or have it perched kind of precariously on some clip or something.
The one thing I'll say is having flown JetBlue a time or two, those screens do look pretty old. So if you're not going to be committed to the screen with the occasional upgrade,
yes,
it's going to make it just seem very, very evident that your aircraft is a very old aircraft.
It will date your aircraft if you've got kind of the very old, like LCD screens that haven't been updated in 15 or 20 years. But, I will say, I think one of the things that I really wish people would look at is kind of the cost benefit of catering, because I think having some elevated items like an ice cream sundae, which I don't think actually costs them a ridiculous amount to cater, like how much does whipped cream and cherries and, a couple of, cups of vanilla ice cream, like what does that really cost them, in the grand scheme of things? I mean, it's not beluga caviar, it's not Laurent Perrier, it's commodity vanilla ice cream in a nice cup.
But you're talking about the same airline that saved $40,000 in 1987 by eliminating a single olive.
Well,
the airlines have a history of figuring out how to.
I agree. But hey, at least they had olives and salads. I mean, like that speaks to something. And there were clearly some standards, that's still around these days. I mean, they still serve, I guess, in general, warm nuts and things like that occasionally on some of these first class seats or first class service. Warm towels, those type of things still persevere, right? Even 20, 30 years after they became kind of a standard of service, right? even though many other things have changed.
Yeah, I still come back to that. There's a level of romance with some of the food products that we have on board. Like, I mean, yeah, economy, those aluminum foiled meals. No, that's not. But between the cookie, between the sundae, between the warm nuts, I mean, there are things that, like, if I think back, right, and I didn't fly in premium cabins, but once when I was a young kid. Funny, I'll tell. We'll go on a tangent real quick. I was, I don't know, 5 or 8 years old, and I was flying down to see my grandparents with my mother, and we go to the check-in counter sometime in the mid late 80s, and the check-in or the agent at the counter asks, "Okay, what seat do you want?" And I pipe up and I say, "Well, I really like the window seat, but my mom likes the aisle seat." And the agent picks at her computer and hands us, "Okay, here you go." And my mother looks and she's like, "Kid, you just got us upgraded to first class." So that was my first experience. I think that was my first experience in first class, but I didn't normally have that. And so when I started working, traveling for work, and I'd get those random upgrades, and you get the warm nuts, and you have the pre-departure beverage, and like the warm nuts, the cookie, those were things that made me feel like nostalgic, I guess, for kind of the experience of the road warrior, right? I mean, you talk to a lot of people, and the road warrior culture is not great, right? I mean, you spend a lot of time away from your family. There's a lot of sacrifices. I mean, it's not all up in the air with Ryan Bingham. But, that warm cookie is that comfort. It's almost like that nice warm blanket that actually is a warm blanket, for your, I suppose, for your tummy. And so it's a little bit of a shame that those things don't really exist as regularly as they had.
Yeah, I mean, I think they a lot of things have gone. A lot of these things are in the history books, and we're having conversations like this where we kind of reminisce and talk fondly of what existed in the past. But at the same time, you have airlines that are very much trying to sell you an experience. And so in some ways, you feel that other things are coming in, to kind of replace some of it. I remember, as a child, they would have playing cards, right? And they'd have plastic wings and those type of things.
They still have the plastic wings for kids, by the way.
I know that they do.
Oh,
but at the same time, what they didn't have, which they have now, is now it seems like all the big three are handing out trading cards for the different airlines, different aircraft in the fleets, right? That the pilots are able to hand out. So there's other collectibles that are kind of finding their way kind of into the standards.
So Delta was big on that. If I recall, it was either, I think it was it the Union that paid for it with United or American? Whoever just recently got them?
I think American. I think American is the one that just got it, and you're right. I think the Union had something to do with it.
That says a lot about an airline. If the Union is the one that has enough pride to be able to put money behind that.
Yeah,
I mean, this is a source of pride for a lot of these pilots too. We had a pilot on our flight to Brisbane, and he actually had I think he had coins minted, and he gave my daughter a coin. He actually came out of the cockpit as we were flying over the Pacific and actually gave that to her. Mm-hmm. And he's like, he specifically made a point. He's like, tell American about this. I'm trying to build a groundswell that we need to be doing this because it's the right thing to do. And I mean, a challenge coin from an airline pilot, maybe not going to get you many drinks, but I mean, the way that my daughter looked at it was pretty dang cool. I mean, she's like, wow, this is awesome. Mm-hmm. I mean, and the trading cards, we flew out of Lima on a Delta A350, and the pilot was so apologetic. I still get a kick out of this. Probably a few years ago now, we're flying on this old former LATAM A350. I mean, this aircraft, there was duct tape on the seats. It was so tired, and the pilot's like, "Yeah, we don't have Wi-Fi, so download anything you can now. We're sorry for the inconvenience. This is not our finest bird, but it's perfectly safe." And he came out. He came out, signed my daughter's logbook, and gave her one of these nice little Delta A350 cards with all the stats and everything. And he had a source of pride.
Yeah.
And when you have interactions with airline employees that have that pride, I mean that's a really special thing.
It's a cultural thing, and I think this is I would say this is one of the differentiators for Delta. I mean, I think Delta treats their people very well. They've got incredible profit sharing program, and the people generally, I think, are the employees are generally very engaged. And I will say the culture for pilots, especially in the Delta side, I very frequently remember sitting in the premium cabin and seeing Delta pilots come out, introduce themselves, and actually interact with the passengers. I rarely see that in any other airline, really, other than Delta. Delta seems to be the one that has made that kind of standard. They take 5, 10, 15 minutes, while they're taking off, and they come out of their cockpit and they circulate themselves through the cabin, and talk about the weather and talk about what kind of ride we're going to have and if we're on time or not. And it doesn't take a lot, but I think it is very memorable because you recognize it because it is vastly different than a lot of other airlines.
Yeah, and I feel like United used to do that before the merger. I remember a flight out. I went out. This was in college back when my wife and I were dating, and she was living in Hawaii. And I went out over Christmas break for New Year's, and I'm flying home after New Year's, and we had an issue. And the pilot, so they had boarded half the plane, maybe a little less than half the plane. We're sitting on the tarmac in Kona, and the pilot comes out of the cockpit and says, "Hey, so this is what's going on. These are the things that we're going to try, and we're going to see what works. And if not, we're going to have to wait for a plane to ferry a part over from Honolulu for us." And he talks with the first class cabin, and then he kind of gives the spiel to us in the premium economy cabin. And then he gets back into the economy cabin because there were still a few people that had boarded there. And as he's talking to the guys in the economy cabin, he's like, "You know what? Hold on a second." Hustles right up to the flight deck and gets on the radio and says, hey folks, we're gonna try turning the APU on, off, and then on again, and then I'm gonna talk to and then we're gonna see what goes. And so he does that, turns the APU off, is able to turn it back on, even though there was some sort of indicator that indicated that was the problem that they were trying to fix. And then did it 2 more times when a mechanic was with him. And he gets on the intercom and he says, "Okay, folks, we have clearance to go. We're taking on extra fuel. We're going to get the rest of the passengers, and we are going to make the quickest flight to LAX that you've ever had." I mean, it was just like the old age of transparency, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a guy. He didn't have to be out here. He could have just been sitting in the cockpit. He could have been sitting in the cockpit. I mean, we didn't have phones back then, right? 2003, or maybe sitting on his iPod. But instead he's out there talking to people, and because he was talking to people and answering their questions, he got an idea, and right. And that could have been the difference between canceling the flight or just getting there a few hours late.
As I sit here, one of the things that does make me think about things is again, maybe with rose-colored glasses, because you're thinking about the past, and you've always got a little bit, of nostalgia. But it does make me wonder a little bit about the next generation, because for us, I think we still grew up where flying was a privilege, where it was a lot of fun. You looked forward to it. And
experience.
It was an experience, and it wasn't always a full plane, and I think you have things like operational upgrades and occasionally, ground staff, doing a surprise and delight to a passenger, moving them up front. It does make me think a little bit, because I feel like those opportunities are just a lot more fewer and far between these days, I would think, compared to maybe when we were a little younger. Or even when we were growing up and we're starting to be kind of younger adults, and we're trying to think, okay, what kind of fun stuff am I going to do? And you kind of fall into aviation, and you're like, hey, it's kind of fun flying around the country, even if you're not doing anything, other than because it's fun. And I remember early in my career, I loved mileage runs. It was a great way to decompress. It was a great way to just see. You get to see places, but it was just nice just being up in the air, being disconnected, watching some movies, being served food and drinks, and taking a nap or something in a comfortable chair, and that was a pretty reasonable way to spend time and money, at least for me. And it's probably not as much fun these days. And definitely you weren't earning miles, or you weren't earning anything that kind of rebated that time and expense, that made, mileage running kind of even more fun, because it was kind of a game, because, it was about, hey, I want to fly really far away. I'm going to waste a little bit of time and waste a little bit of money, but I'm going to get some of it back. And I'm going to get some additional, elite benefits down the road, which might be more upgrades and more of this, and it became kind of a vicious or virtuous cycle, depending on your point of view. And I feel like that's not something that's as obtainable for people now, right? Just because of the nature of planes being full and them really starting to monetize the front cabin, where, they don't have a lot of seats to give away anymore.
It's true. I mean, we used to do mileage runs. You and I used to do mileage runs together. Yeah, together. And I mean, my wife.
Some of them actually complete, and sometimes they ended in disaster. But okay.
Well, but even the ones that ended in disaster, we tested out different things in the contract of carriage, right? Like we learned things.
Yes.
Like we always learned from those things, like whether it was trying to visit a new lounge on a layover, or trying to see, okay, we've got a weather delay, what can we do, can we go directly home and skip this other stop but still get original mileage credit. I mean, we were always just we were just trying things. I mean,
we were trying to find the angles. Yes, it was part of the game. It's part of the game, and the game has changed.
Well, it has. I mean, it used to be, what, $200 you could fly from D.C. to
the West Coast.
D.C. to Orlando to the West Coast and then back, and kind of hopscotch around the country. 5,000
or 6,000 redeemable miles. Maybe just or actually probably 5,000 or 6,000 elite qualifying miles, and probably 10,000 redeemable miles, if depending on your elite bonus.
And then that game turned when they started to make a dollar value need, right? Like the dollar value, or whatever the heck they called it first. Loyalty points.
Revenue based.
Yeah, revenue based. And then we moved, right? So I remember doing a mileage run on American, going from 1K to American X-Plat. And we did a mileage run for 74 hours in India, because I needed exactly that many miles to be able to get that exact plat status. Mm-hmm. And then we shifted to, my wife and I would do these date weekends where we'd fly to like Qatar. We'd fly Qatar Airways. We'd do a repositioning flight on miles, and then we'd just stitch a number of Qatar Airways flights out of Cairo or Colombo, Sri Lanka. And Colombo, Sri Lanka, by the way, I'm starting to see some good airfares. $1,500, by the way, Colombo to Atlanta. I'm thinking maybe it's still alive, or maybe it died. I'm here on the Premium Fair Deals forum and another one of our favorite sites. Figuring that maybe we can end the episode with just an interesting deal or two that we're seeing at this moment. Realizing that we have seen, because we've been talking offline, probably in the last 3 weeks we've seen probably 5 or 7 really good deals that we really were feeling compelled, and they just don't last very long. And I'm not even talking like a mistake fare, like what was that YVR Vancouver to was it Vancouver to Istanbul?
Europe, it was on Turkish, but it was, I think, to a number of YVR to various European cities for relatively cheap, like, under $500 or something, I think.
Yeah, it was that I would call,
that's a mistake,
a stupidly fare. Good deal. Yeah.
That's a mistake fare. But with all that's going on in the world, I mean, I think there is some discounting going on, and I would say Etihad in particular seems to be one of the carriers that is doing the most of this. They clearly are not feeling the normal amount of load, on their flights. So they have quite a few discounted flights, although most of them are not in the U. They're not U.S. originating. There's a lot of European to, let's say, Asia type of flights that have been very, very advantageous, like in the $1,000 each way in business. And usually these, unfortunately, are business light fares, so they don't include seat selection or lounge access. But I know I upgraded I actually bought one of these. I bought Maldives to London for just around $1,100. And that was slightly upgraded from the business light fare because I did want to get lounge access and be able to make ticket changes. So I actually did buy one of these tickets, and I will fly it in a couple of weeks.
I'm excited to see how that goes. I really am. And it's not just Etihad. Qatar has some interesting looking ones as well. A little bit more expensive, but interesting nonetheless, I would say.
Yeah, they do, but they're just not as many. I just feel like Etihad has just dotted the map.
Much more widespread.
A lot of city pairs that are pretty advantageous. And if you just do a little Google Explore and have some, put a couple of different big airports in Southeast Asia, you can see where you can pretty much get to all parts of Europe for just around $1,000.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible.
Pretty good for business class.
Yeah, it is. And I don't know. It really comes down to your risk threshold. I feel like I'm ready to be willing to do something like that. I think it's just a time thing for me, and probably a time thing for you, right? Just the way that because you get into that summer season, and it's like you've got family trips, you've got all these other things going on. And so for me, I'm probably not gonna take my family through the Middle East, but I'm like totally game for a guy's trip.
But I happen to be going to the Maldives, and it is hard not to transit the Middle East these days. Mind you, there are some options, whether they be on Singapore or on Cathay, so you could route through Asia or something. But realistically, the majority of flights, if you're going from North America to the Maldives, you're probably going through the Mideast, and it will be a little bit interesting how hopefully nothing impacts me. I'm have my fingers crossed. And by the way, I'm also transiting not only through the Mideast, I'm also transiting through Europe. So I've got multiple. I can be affected by fuel shortages in Europe. I can be affected by missiles and drones in Doha or Abu Dhabi. So I have multiple ways that my vacation could be. You're reminding me. I need to double check my travel insurance. I think is what you've just reminded me.
Yes, don't forget the smog in the Maldives. Right? You've got the air quality in the Maldives.
Oh,
although you're gonna be able to go into the new terminal.
Yes.
Oh, you're gonna get to see the new. Oh, you're gonna have to take videos. I'm so jealous. That terminal. They drove us by there a couple of years ago when we were there. My first time at in the Maldives, first and only, and that new terminal looks gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
Like the concierge or the handler that we had is telling us, yeah, there's going to be new lounges, and they're actually going to have jetways instead of the air stairs.
Buses.
And yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong, there's a little bit of nostalgia for getting out in the open air on air stairs. When you're going to a tropical environment. But I'll take the jetway every time. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm just weird, but as a team carry-on, I'll take the jetway. If I'm checking everything, yeah, I'll walk down the stairs and I'll feel all like prime ministerial or something or presidential.
Yeah, I guess even more reason to buy up a little bit from some of these business light fares, try to get some lounge access, especially in places like this new terminal in the Maldives. I still need to actually figure out where I'm staying in the Maldives. I mean, we have the resort that we're going to, but we bookended the trip by having a day in Malé before and after. And my friends want to stay in the city of Malé. I have done that before. I am more leaning toward maybe being in a different place. Despite my trying to convince them, they did not seem interested in changing their accommodation. So it is very possible I'm going to be housing myself elsewhere. Maybe above on one of the islands that's like north of the airport instead of
like the Le Méridien or
is that
the Le Méridien or the Sheridan?
I think both of them might be like speed. I forget which one
They're
is.
one's
The
a speedboat.
Sheraton, the Sheraton's definitely speedboat, but I'm probably going to actually just stay in a place that I can drive from the airport without having to get on a ship or a boat or some other kind of transport. Although there has been more development on some of the island that is not the traditional city or the traditional island where Male is located. And Male, for those listeners who have not been there are not aware, one of the most densely populated islands on the planet. There is literally every inch and square foot of that island has been developed and has either a building or something there. There's not any undeveloped land on that island whatsoever. And so they have started reclaiming land. In fact, I think part of the airport is probably on reclaimed land, and there's a reclaimed island, I think, north of the airport as well. And that's what I'm talking about. There's a lot of new development on kind of some reclaimed land, I think that is north of the airport.
Well, I can't wait to hear that trip report. I really can't, because that's an aspect that we don't normally do. We don't normally cover that, on a place like on Malay, the island.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that'll be really interesting for our listeners. Now,
Absolutely.
And the interesting thing about that is I think it'll be informative, because so often you get late flights in and you can't take a seaplane. And so it'd be good to be able to have, an idea. Hey, maybe I do want to, still take that later flight in, and I'll stay on the island. I'll be able to maybe take a little bit of a tour in the morning before I get on my seaplane to the, to the Waldorf Astoria or the Park Hyatt. I mean, there is stuff to see there. It's not just this country full of island paradises.
And I have done that before as well. I've actually taken a local ferry to one of the islands that you can take public transport to, and stayed there as well. So I think there are a lot of different options. I know one of them also is to pick a resort for a day or two that is that doesn't require a seaplane to go to, like the Sheraton. So there's lots of options, and I think it makes a lot of sense to kind of buffer your trip so that you're making the most out of the very expensive, transfers and resort time, which, you're paying a lot of money for that. So ideally you want to, get out of Male in an early seaplane flight and then leave the resort on a late flight. So you're maximizing your time on whatever resort island you happen to be on. And the best way to do that is buffer your trip by having, a night at a lesser hotel or lesser accommodation on the island the day before and the day after you stay at the Park Hyatt or the Waldorf or the Conrad or whatever.
Exactly. And I will put a plug. So I know that Cathay Pacific does have that flight. That's a little bit harder to do, in my opinion, nowadays, just the way that the tone of Hong Kong has become. I know more and more people are talking about taking burner phones there, just because of some of the laws and everything. Not offering an opinion, but we talked about it with Ed.
And more pragmatically, Cathay has not been as generous with releasing seats.
It's true. This is true.
So compared to the heyday, when I would fly Cathay all the time, just because it was like clockwork, you'd have space available.
What I will say, though, is that that JFK flight, if you can find the JFK to Singapore flight nonstop, you get in early in the morning. I think that banks to like an 8 a.m. or earlier flight out of Singapore into Male. And that is a really, really nice timed flight. You probably get in, you make it to your hotel, your resort hotel, at a point where the room is ready. I mean, it's just... That to me seems like about as optimal a flight as can be, if you're okay with the 18 hours to get to Singapore. Obviously, it's a little bit less time to go to the Middle East from the East Coast, but I always just get a little bit miffed about the timing of some of the connections in the Middle East, because you either have to be early in the day or later in the day, right? Because there's not as many. Maybe I haven't looked at the schedules as recently, but I felt like in the heat of the day, they have a lot fewer flights, and it's just not as ideal.
Well, I can give you the data point of how I'm getting there now, which is on Qatar Airways. I'm actually flying from Barcelona to Doha. It gets in at midnight into Doha, and then the flight to the Maldives is 2 a.m. in the morning, and then I think it gets there fairly early, like 8 or 9 in the morning, which is pretty nice from getting into the Maldives. But of course, the connection time being between midnight and 2 a.m., that's kind of dead of night kind of connection.
Yeah, and I feel like I'd want a little bit longer. Just me. I'd want enough time to be able to get a proper meal, get a shower, especially because you're going to the Maldives and you're going to pay. So you really want to get the time to provision. Fill that belly, fill that backpack, and then you land at like an 8 or 9 a.m. I think that's a really good time to land. You probably still make it to the hotel around lunchtime, and you've got the time to have yet another breakfast in the lounge. You're not rushed. It's just a nice experience, and I assume they still have that seaport, that beautiful seaport. It's like a 4 or 5 story building of every hotel has their own lounge. It's sort of funny because like everybody's in a lounge, and then they walk you down into the the gate area, and there's like this subset of people that like you're like where are they going? Because like theoretically everybody should be on the same. Everybody should have been in a lounge because you're going to a resort, but I guess there's like the 1 or 2 that hotels that just don't want to do that.
It is a little different for the Park Hyatt because Park Hyatt actually uses Trans-Maldivian, not the seaplanes, but they actually use actual regional jets.
Oh, really?
Because the transit island, at least unless something's changed, and of course I haven't been there in a couple of years, but the Park Hyatt is one where you end up going to getting off at one island and then taking a speedboat from that island to the Park Hyatt. So the plane doesn't actually land on the same island that the resort is at.
Oh yeah, I do remember that. And you have like a little golf cart from the from the regional jet to your seaplane or boat.
You have a little golf cart to both, generally. Although, yes, you usually have a golf cart from the airport where you're being dropped off to the seaplane. And then sometimes they usually, depending on where you're staying on the resort in the Park Hyatt, they will have a golf cart to take you from where you disembark the speedboat to either your villa, either if it's kind of further away, one of the overwater villas, then yeah, definitely it's usually a golf cart will take you because it's quite the distance to walk.
Yeah.
But going back to your point about, having a little bit extra time in Doha, I can tell you that was not the flight that I originally booked.
Oh.
So yes, I agree with you. It's sometimes beggars cannot be choosers. My original flight has been canceled, by the way. So.
You were just looking. Is this breaking news?
No. This was several weeks ago. I got an email message saying my flight has been canceled, and I of course immediately started getting on the American Airlines app because this is a book with American Airlines miles, as one does, which is pretty good sweet spot, by the way. Europe to the Maldives, only 42,000, I think 500 in for business class, and it's a fairly long flight. But in any case, I started chatting on the American Airlines app, and the agent was completely useless. They didn't know what they were doing. They offered me to rebook me and coach, and I'm like, no, I don't think that's what you. I don't think that's. I'm gonna get back to you. And a little bit. This happened while I was actually having dinner in a restaurant, and so I promptly, hung up on whoever was chatting with, and when I did get home, I got on my computer and I looked at availability, and I saw that there was this Barcelona, Doha, Maldives, the one that I'm on now, that was available. I re-chatted an American Airlines agent and said, "Hey, I want this," and of course, it still took me about an hour, even though I fed them the flights and it said it's available. I probably would have just been better off just canceling and just rebooking or booking it right away and just telling them to cancel the old ticket because there was availability. So I could have just used, and I had fortunately enough mileage that I could just have booked it straight out. That probably would have saved me some time, but I ended up just chatting with them when they say, "Please, hold, please. We appreciate your business." And
they tell you that 200 times on the recording.
Yes. It's like, I'm still working on it. Give me a little bit more time, please. And I'm like, okay. But they did eventually get me booked. And actually, it's one less stop because my original itinerary was Barcelona, Doha, Colombo.
Oh yeah, you don't want to do that. No.
I did that on purpose because I was going to meet up with my friends in Sri Lanka.
Oh, so
because everybody got on the same flight. But unfortunately, because of them
And
canceling,
you miss out on the chair massage too.
yeah.
They used to have
Well,
nice massages. Like when we did our date night type or date weekend, my wife and I.
what, to Colombo?
The Sri Lankan lounge had like nice. It had like this little corner in the lounge. It's like this really dark lounge, and you know it's like 2 a.m. in the morning, and they're
Yeah.
offering massages. I'm like, okay, hey,
I don't really like
Who am I
massages.
to say no?
I'm not a big massage person, so I don't usually seek those out. But I have seen the inside of Colombo Airport a little bit too often. There have been some mileage runs and inexpensive business class that originates out of there. So and Colombo's one of those places. There's a lot of them. Jakarta, Denpasar, Phuket, Bangkok. There's just a lot of usual suspects out there.
We need to start investigating some of those because we are overdue.
Tunis,
and it's
Kathmandu, Marrakesh. There's a lot of them out there.
yes, we are overdue. We need to get after that. If only for the pod, right?
Well,
If
you're
only
overdue.
for the show.
I'm flying one in like 3 or 4 weeks, so you're overdue.
No, I mean a guy. I mean we're overdue for
A guy's
Stories
trip.
guy trip.
Yeah. Well,
Well, and
it's only April. I mean, we still have some time. I mean, our first guy trip last year, what was that? What didn't happen until July or something?
June.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
But you're right.
But remember, we did the family trip. We did the family trip in March.
We did do
right?
the family trip in March. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So
Fair enough.
we're behind here, but it's interesting you mentioned about that Doha thing. So I booked a flight for a mutual friend of ours, Turkish, right? Great award, going to Sicily, and it's like an LAX Istanbul Sicily, and they canceled it within like the first couple of days of the war or of this Operation Epic Fury, and I'm like, okay, you haven't given the miles back. Like they've tried to call, I've tried to call. Like we're so confused about what this is. Like they said, like the flight from LA to Istanbul was canceled, and we're like, but it's not. And then every like couple of weeks I get like an email saying, hey, there's been a schedule change, and I'm like, so is it canceled? Is it just changed? I haven't dedicated the time I need to, but like it's just very, very confusing.
There's certain
what's
carriers
going on
in this
there.
world that are just not a pleasure to deal with. And
This is true.
And I'm guessing some have the letters TK, unfortunately. By the way, I hopefully that has nothing to do with me, but anyway, it just happens to be an airline whose initials are TK, that might be one of those. I would say there's probably another one. Is Avianca what is Avianca? I'm trying
I think
to
it's
remember
AV.
that. Is it AV? Okay.
Yeah.
Avianca is probably another one of those. There's probably a couple of these airlines that are like that.
Although Nick seemed to imply that they're getting better,
Yeah.
which gives me hope.
I had to cancel a flight on them, and I was so happy that I had a coworker who was bilingual, and I handed the phone over to her, and she just went to town and said, Senor Kim needs to, do the following, blah 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 blah, and it was amazing, and I wish I still worked with her, and it's probably good that I don't have any Avianca flights booked anyway.
I'm trying to think of current coworkers that I could leverage. Let's see. I think I could safely book with Vietnam Airways now.
Okay, there you go. And that is another country that you have managed to somehow avoid despite our best efforts on multiple occasions.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
It's going to happen? Okay.
The goal is we are taking a 3-week winter Christmas trip. The goal right now is, and I'm putting it out there, listeners, if you see things that make sense, feel free to share. Would love to get any tips and tricks. But we're looking at trying to fly out before Christmas to Japan, go to Tokyo Sea. Dia, friend of the pod, has said that age 4 or 5 is the time to do Disney, and that's where my daughter is. And so we're going to try to do Tokyo Sea for Christmas, see it all done up in Christmas decorations, and then we're going to fly down to Vietnam. I want to go to the Park Hyatt. What is it? The Park Hyatt Saigon, or Park Hyatt Hanoi, or are there both?
I don't think there is a Park Hyatt in Hanoi. I think it is.
Yeah.
It is
Park
only
Hyatt Saigon.
Yep.
We're thinking that we're either going to stay in Hoi An, Da Nang, or where is that other one? Poof Rock. That remember that Marriott that had
Yes.
the different
Fuquoc.
rooms.
Fuquoc.
Yeah, Phu Quoc. The cool Marriott with like different rooms that were like, like it was essentially a university. You had the bar was the chemistry lab and stuff like that.
We could go into a whole other conversation about this, because that is there's a Starchitect that is responsible for that JW Marriott.
You're
and
right.
he's also responsible for the Intercontinental Hotel in
Da
Da
Nang,
Nang.
right? Yes.
He's also the architect there. And
did you see in Da Nang, you have to take like a little tram up to the
yes,
breakfast place, and they've got like it's. I mean,
I'm
there's
well
just
aware.
so much coolness that I'm just I'm geeking out on.
My first trip to Da Nang was all about visiting that hotel. Of course, I happened to pick Tet holiday to visit Da Nang, and that hotel was sold out. So of course, the whole reason I wanted to go it completely was eliminated,
no.
because I had saw that hotel and I was intrigued, because it was at one point the number one hotel in like Travel and Leisure magazines, hotels of the world, and I was like, the Intercontinental Da Nang is the number one hotel, and
I never would have thought.
It blew my mind. This was, of course, 2016, but this was the year where I was essentially kind of early retired, and visiting the world, and that put Da Nang on my map. And of course, the date that I happened to pick, did it even occur to me that like there's some major holiday around there? Of course, it was, Tet holiday, Chinese New Year. I mean, like, duh. I mean, like, I don't know how I didn't know, but I didn't know. So.
Well, we will make you proud and make sure to stay at the Intercontinental Da Nang.
And by the way, HAN, SGN, two other good hotel or airport codes to include in your search for inexpensive business class flights or award availability, because there are often some interesting routes out of those two cities that can be very, very advantageous for miles and points aficionado.
Absolutely. I mean, just to put a finer point on that. So a few years ago, 2021 or 2022, the Traegers, so Michael Traeger of Zork Travel and Zorkfest, another friend of the pod who we probably need to have on at some point again.
Mm-hmm.
He and his wife flew, I think it was New York, Japan, down to Saigon, I think, or SGN. And I think they did that for like under $2,000 a round trip in business class. And I get that that's a high cost, but when you think about being able to reduce all the frustration of, trying to stitch together award flights and all that other stuff, it seemed like a pretty good deal to me. It might have been like in the 1,800 to 2,100 range. I don't know that we'll see that again in the near term, but
doesn't appear to be. Yeah.
That was not uncommon in even before the pandemic, where you could do a Japan Airlines or a Cathay Pacific down to SGN or to Denpasar, Bali, or Jakarta. Jakarta is a really good one too. That's still a good option for finding flights.
Originating though, not originating on the U.S. side. I think the days of originating in the U.S. and then making it out to Jakarta, they did occur, and that did happen back in the day. But in recent memory, I haven't seen it. But at the same time, originating in Jakarta, originating in Denpasar, originating in Vietnam, those do seem to be good choices for finding inexpensive. And I think anything, crossing, most of the globe in business class for $1,000 each way, I think that is the new normal of winning, basically.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it really comes down to, if you can stitch together a few trips, you can probably do things for fewer miles and fewer dollars combined, and you can have some really great experiences. But I mean, it also requires a lot of planning and a lot of flexibility. And I totally get that not everybody has that ability. But if you, so I have, give me a second here. I've got a great, so, don't usually do this. So we have, and I have the other side that has all my dates on it, so I can't show you that with the highlights. But we use this calendar, and this
old
is
fashioned.
This is my map of the year, I call it. It's my map of the year. And I put I put our so my wife and I get days off, second Friday off every other week, right? And so I put that day, I put our holidays on, and then I have like a running tracker of how many days off we have, each of us. And we just highlight little areas where we want to, try to stitch together a trip. And so any given time, if I see an award alert or if I see a good airfare, I can just pull that out and I can start stitching together, hey, what does this look like? And then, in another month or two, I'm going to have the same thing for next year. And I just like the idea of being able to really start planning and sort of sketching things out. Because if you can stitch together, a one-way or a round-trip fare from Southeast Asia, hey, I'm gonna be there in January, and I'm gonna need to fly home. Maybe I don't want to go back in March. Maybe I want to go back the following Thanksgiving, or maybe I want to go back the following Christmas. And if I can sort of stitch those things together, I can I can find some efficiencies there. And I'm sure our listeners and viewers, do we have viewers? I'm sure some folks are actually seeing us. I think
some of us are watching us on YouTube. Yeah, I think some are. Definitely.
Well, the viewers actually will get a little extra this episode, right? Because you're going to put in some of your photos.
Oh, I will.
They got to see our the menus. They get to see my little calendar map, and so I'd encourage our listeners to be viewers of this episode.
Yeah, fair point, and we'll try to give you a little bit more interesting things on the YouTube side that will, I guess, hopefully make it worth your time and your eyeballs to use a few more senses to enjoy our podcast. But I will say that I probably have completely lost my train of thought, but we're probably gonna have to edit that part out. But
that's great. That's great. Oh, that's fantastic.
But I've really enjoyed this walk down memory lane and kind of remembering what used to be and what were really an amazing flight for me, and remembering Continental. May they rest in peace. Although many bits and pieces of them still stick around, including the good old Blue Globe. Yeah, and and Copa. Yeah.
Continental continues to live in Copa Airlines.
Yes, that's right.
They have that same annoying business class seat on their, I think on their 737 MAX 9s.
They refuse to let Continental die. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I mean, hey, but let's be honest. A lay flat on a narrow body, I give them all the credit in the world.
Oh yeah.
I just wish they flew it to BWI or Dulles, which they don't.
They're working on it. They got to get some more Maxes, I guess.
Yeah. I hear Boeing is going to be able to ramp up their production of Maxes soon.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah.
They just need to keep all the doors intact.
Well, I look forward to talking to you next time. By the way, I've got some gripes and grievances that I can talk about. Next time we talk.
Okay. Well, we'll save that, and definitely we've got that trip report, and I think we might have another special guest for actually the next episode. We'll we won't tease that too much, but I think that's the show. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed listening.
If you've enjoyed this episode, consider becoming a Milenomics Patreon member and get access to even more in-depth miles, points, and travel content.
Until then, we hope your next story is a travel story.